shapes, I told you guys to overlap them a little bit like I did here on the board. They shouldn't be completely overlapping each other. So they shouldn't be stacked on top of each other. But click on one that's on the bottom, right click and go down to Arrange and click on Bring to Front. Okay, so that's where those are at. You can also right click, go to Arrange and Send to Back. Now click on one of those objects that are in the middle. If you right click, or no, excuse me, click on the object that's in the back, right click, go to Arrange and go to Bring Forward. How's that different than Bring to Front? How's Bring Forward different than Bring to Front? Right, it goes up an object, but not all of them. Okay? So if you have multiple objects that are on top of one another, you can arrange them by right clicking, Bring to Front, Send to Back. All those are available to you. So you can right click on the star, arrange, go to Send to Back. Now it's behind everything. You'll notice when you click on one of those objects at a time though, even if it's at behind everything else, you'll still see the path. Okay, so Illustrator will still show you what's underneath. Okay, and again, don't stack your objects right on top of each other. Offset them just a little bit so that you can tell that there are three objects stacked on top of each other. Now, if you want to change the color of any of these objects once you make them, you can use these sliders over here, or you can double click back on your fill. And that works for your stroke as well. You can use these sliders, or there's even a little color picker down here as well. Anybody a picker? Now, let's say you want to move multiple objects at one time. There's a couple ways that you can go about doing it. First of all, you have to make sure you're clicked on the selection tool. That's the black arrow. Click on one of those objects and hold down Shift. Matt, separate your objects so that they're not right on top of each other for me. Thank you. Click on one object, hold down Shift, and now you can click on those other objects. And now they're temporarily frozen together. You can move them around on your page all together at the same time. When they're temporarily frozen together, you can also resize them, hold down Shift, and click on one of the squares in the corner. You can resize those objects at the same time as well. Again, make sure you're clicking on the corner and holding down Shift. You don't want to stretch things out of proportion. So now click off of that group and you'll notice you can move those objects separately again. So by clicking on one, hold down Shift, you can click on all three of them. You can resize them by holding down Shift. I want you guys to get into the habit of holding down Shift when you resize. Now these objects aren't frozen together. This isn't one group, but you can group your objects by selecting multiple objects at one time. Check it out. If you click and drag a selection, and as long as that selection touches those three objects, it'll select them. And now the key command to group is Control G. So Control G will freeze those objects together. And now if you click off and click back on, those three objects will still be locked together. Now, if you no longer want those objects to be grouped together, Control G will group them. Control Shift G, hold down Control and Shift together and type a G. That'll ungroup objects. So you got Control G to group and Control Shift G will ungroup. Now you can move these objects separately again. Objects do not have to be touching each other in order for you to group them. They don't have to be overlapped in order for you to group them or ungroup them. They just have to be selected. You know an object is selected because you've clicked on it and you'll see these white squares that pop up around it. Hold down Shift. Now you can select multiple objects. Now do Control G to group them together. And now you can move them around. Control Shift G will ungroup them. And now you can move them as well. Now, selecting multiple objects is very useful. Because let's say you had 10 or 12 objects on the page and you wanted to change the color of each of those objects to the exact same thing. Well, what you can do is you can select those objects, and then if you go over here to your color tab, any color you select will be in all three objects at the same time. As long as they're selected together, you can change the color of them all at the same time. So try that. Yeah. Change the color of your objects all at the same time. All right, we cool there? Everybody know how to do that? We're good? Okay, let's move on to the stroke. So right now we're just working with the fill, but take a look up at the screen. Click on, let's say, the circle. And click on the fill and change your fill to none. You'll notice that the stroke is also on none, but you'll see the path. And go ahead and put a color on the path. And click off of the circle, and this is what you should get. So now we're just going to edit the path, and to edit the path, we're going to use the stroke tab. We've already put a color on the stroke, but now what we're going to do is increase the stroke weight to make that line thicker. So click your up button a couple times, and you'll notice now you'll have a thicker stroke on that path. Obviously, if you click your down arrow, it'll make it thinner. You can also use the pull down if you know exactly the size that you want it to be. Next is the dashed line. Take a look up at the board. Make sure you're clicked on the circle using the black arrow. You'll have to make sure now, because this object doesn't have a fill, it just has a path and a stroke on that path, you won't be able to click inside of that circle. Okay? You'll have to make sure you click on the path. But click on the path to select that circle, and now click here where it says dashed line. And that'll make this one a dashed line. You can change the amount of space in between each of the gaps by typing a number here where it says gap. So type a 2 in there where it says gap, and then type 8. See what the difference is. And this is on any stroke, not just a circle. You can do it on the star, you can do it on the oval, rectangle, no matter what